So is the architecture that as a technology leader you develop and the governance that you put in place, which has had quite a traditional way of being done for 15, 20 years, is it harsh to say that's no longer fit for purpose? And is there a new way of creating architecture and new forms of governance that you're looking at that embraces DevOps but understands your legacy and all of those things that we've discussed in this debate?
I think so.
So I have an interesting perspective on this one, but having recently joined Tanium, and the reason that we've been very successful in very large organisations is we have completely reimagined the architecture when it comes to our particular challenge. So most software vendors continue to use a client-server model. We're using more of a distributed computing pattern. So to manage larger IT estates, generally you'd need, in some cases, thousands of servers just managing other computers, which just seems like an inefficient waste of resources. And actually, what we spent the first 3-4 years of our company's existence back in 2007 onwards, just reimagining how we do this, and so coming up with this linear chain architecture. So fundamentally rethinking the architecture, and I think this is happening in all industries, not just from the technology standpoint, but if you think about the operating model as an extension of your architecture, your business architecture. It's a bit cliched, but you look at the Ubers and you look at the Airbnbs and the others that are rethinking how their business is architected in terms of capabilities as well as technology. I think this is happening all over the place. Sure, there's some legacy technology that maybe are your systems of record that you wouldn't want to touch, but I think there are absolutely opportunities to rethink, and the ones that do will be the ones that will get a leg up and an advantage over the competitors that aren't thinking that way.
I was just going to add, so traditional architecture in the past was, if you had a problem to solve or a product to build, you would think of it in that full stack context. You'll draw all the lines between all of the boxes, and you'll talk SOAR or whatever, words that you probably wouldn't understand. And the way the architecture of the future is very different. It happens in much smaller domains. So, and what I try to do is to create guide rails for those domains. So if you're at the front end building a product or a service, your guide rails are very simple, give you all of the freedom you need as long as you're in those guide rails. So promoting reuse, use of APIs, the use of data in a certain way, security integration into the enterprise in a particular way. And if you're able to do that, then go to town. Just build as much agility and as much speed and flexibility as you can in your product and service. And that's very different to the traditional architect that would think of that whole solution end to end. In fact, we don't want that anymore. If we do that, we're taking steps back in terms of how we do things. So trying to democratize architecture. And that's very difficult for the architects and for security and for everyone across the organization. So we have to bring everybody along on that journey as well for us.
In my hospitality world, we don't get quite the same ability to change. So it has been dominated by large players who kind of have these things called PMSs, which are basically ERP, but they're designed to be closed. So everything is in there from your crew rostering to your check-in, check-out, and they don't talk and they don't share data. They're locked in for decades. But the newer players are basically API first, and they're not hotel management systems, they're asset management systems. So you could turn that room into a meeting room or turn that into a car parking space. It's the same systems. So I think for me it's about flexibility, and it's about picking the right partners who can kind of grow with you, have the same shared vision, because otherwise it doesn't matter what your architects want to do. If the suppliers can't deliver it, you're wasting your time.
I think I'm maybe slightly more at the sort of controlling end of the spectrum in terms of, I think one of the things we've been really keen to do is ensure that we have real clarity about IT policies, controls and standards, and those are promulgated and they are real. So and maybe that's a structure that the colleagues are talking about here. And actually I don't want sort of innovation and agility happening everywhere. I mean, the organisation can't manage that amount of change. And, as I said before, we want to make some choices about where we go. I think then picking on the areas where we do want to really accelerate and really change. So what we're trying to do is sort of target developing new services and new products in terms of where we're going and how we run plants are sort of two of our sort of focus areas where we're trying to manage that kind of change in the ways that we've talked about. But for the rest, I think consciously being appropriately locked down and just allowing changes in the right way is important.
Gentlemen, thank you for a fantastic debate. I've got this vision of the enterprise becoming like a bobsleigh run, where you've got these teams in the bobsleigh hurtling towards change, working together as a team, but contained within the safety, the guide rails, if you will, of the run,
Suitability filter.
Absolutely. Thank you for a fantastic debate and sharing your insights from your more varied organisations and experiences. It's been a joy to host. Thank you for joining us. My name is Mark Chillingworth. This is The Studio.